afternoon. Clock. It is January 31st. We're going to be dealing with the requests in our capital bill for the judiciary. We have members of the judiciary here as well as BGS. So this is section 14 on our spreadsheet. And in our book, you're going to want to go to the judiciary tab. Yeah. Because it's hard to find these tabs.
Okay, here's the first question.
No,
No.
Why would, Barry Courthouse not be in this section?
We'll find that out.
Okay,
Okay, they probably need to figure out where they're gonna go. It's in this
said
section.
they need land.
It's in this section if you flip the page, but there's no money for it.
no pork. They need some. Flooded.
Okay, so we're on page 26. In our book, it is section 14 on our spreadsheet. And we have 4 items there, and we'll probably also get an update on the Barry Courthouse where we put money in there past few years. So we have with us Joe Asia. He's gonna start it off and then we'll go to the judiciary. So Joe, you're only gonna be doing one item, right? Which is
Two items.
second on the page, Newport. Oh God, Newport, yes.
No.
Or not.
Perhaps just one, yes. Also,
Okay, yeah.
good afternoon. For the record, Joe Aja, Director of Design and Construction with Buildings and General Services. As Madam Chair was stating, we are here on the judiciary section, section 14. And these are I'm presenting on the 2 projects that were appropriated. Funding was appropriated to Buildings and General Services. First up is the White River Junction Courthouse renovation. This is an ongoing project. It's been in the works for quite some time. Took a little hiatus during COVID and we got it up and running. They're now under construction. Judiciary has temporarily moved out of the space. Most of their operations being run across the street in lease space, and the court functions down in Woodstock. What we're doing in this facility was started out as an overhaul of end of life equipment and our air handlers, chillers, and boilers. And at the same time, taking into account the energy code and also some additional interior renovations for judiciary in there, because a lot of the work that we're doing will be tearing out the ceilings, some of the walls to put the new air handling equipment in and the likes of that. So at that same time, to make those minor modifications to accommodate judiciary was a great time to do it. Judiciary is also looking to have a front entrance, a small expansion for their security. Because from the days that it was built back in the 80s, things have changed. They're just walking through the front door without some sort of type of a process. So that bump out on the front of the door of the building is for them. And also on the side, we have a little smaller addition also going on to add some room, both on the first floor, mainly an entry, a secure entry point, and then on a little office space upstairs. To date, we've had, total estimated project cost is 18.5 million. Appropriated to date is 7.5. And we are asking for 8 million. Part of this project also was in the back side of the building, outside, is about 100 feet away is the river. The Trinidad River, and the issue being is some of our bank is starting to give way. And so in the future request of 2.5 million is going to be for that bank stabilization. But it is not included in the funding for this year. This funding here should get us through all the renovations that need to take place. I'd mentioned earlier that there was discussions about taking the brick off the building and insulating the exterior, and then putting additional plate tile on the exterior. It's down there 2 weeks ago, and that really doesn't look like the viable way to go. And instead, we'll be doing the insulation on the inside. So we've taken out the sheetrock and adding insulation and putting the sheetrock back on the exterior walls. That way, we will be able to also correct the water intrusion. The contractor has developed a method in order to get the rigid flashing in and above the window jambs and the header. We believe that's going to work well, and there will be potentially some cost savings because of the demolition of the brick and putting the clay tile back on versus the sheetrock and demolition on the inside. But on the inside, along with the sheetrock, there's also wood wainscot and chair rail. So that still has to be put back. But that is the process of going through, because the main reason for it was the additional structural additions to the exterior wall to hold up the clay tile was going to be needed, and that was not included in this price. So we worked with our construction manager and our architect to develop and find a different method of getting the same exterior insulated value.
So does that increase the cost at all?
No, we were hoping at best it's a wash. If not, hopefully it could be a credit back in the end. But they're still evaluating that right now.
So to date, we've put together over 3 fiscal years, 7.5 million. Was this anticipated being this high when we first started? 18.5, well, without the 2.5 million.
When this originally started, no. And we also didn't anticipate 2.5 million in the bank stabilization. That was going to start out originally as a major maintenance project. We thought we just had to add some fill and stone to stabilize the bank. But after having a geotechnician come in and evaluate that bank slippage, it's more extensive. So thus we're doing it in a future year. But a lot of this is just due to really the cost of inflation going up from the time that we initially put the estimate together to what we're seeing today.
What was that initial estimate? Do you remember?
It was pre-COVID.
Okay. Okay. It's not really valid. Kevin?
I like to heat with wood. I was just curious what the rationale was for replacing the oil-fired burner or boilers with pellet.
We have to look at life cycle costs if we're doing this. It was an emergency repair, so we have time to do that. And the oil fire boilers are end of life. With our life cycle cost analysis, it actually came out to be geothermal in the estimate. From our past experience on 2 other projects with geothermal, in the end, costing more because we did not do test wells or the proper locations. So we went out and we drilled 3 test wells. The findings from those 3 test wells showed that we needed to increase the number of wells that we were required to do this. And then once you factored that in, the pellets life cycle cost went up. So we pivoted and switched to pellet boilers instead.
Are you gonna need storage for the pellets and all?
Yes, there'll be a silo on the backside.
Yeah.
So we're gambling pellets are gonna go up slower than oil.
They do. Yes, we have several pellet boilers across the state. Originally, when we started with pellet boilers, the manufacturers out there and delivery services, you had to take a full load. It's not required as much, so we don't have as large a silo that other locations have. Hartford Rest Area, Berry Courthouse. They're larger because that was to offload a whole one. Now you can get smaller loads, but this will be able to function better with the amount of load. So probably 2-3 times a year of delivery instead of one large silo.
Did you look at propane and natural gas?
There's no natural gas in that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Propane, that I don't recall if that was part of the life cycle cost. I'd have to check for sure.
Yeah,
But typically propane comes in higher
okay.
in the long run.
So part of this cost that you've already expended, the 3.9. Is that for moving the court staff across the street
It is
and leasing? That's,
that, including the design and also the pre-construction for our construction manager. What's not shown here is in the works right now is the guaranteed maximum price. We should be receiving that soon and doing change order one, and that 2.9 million will easily be gone by summer.
hang on here. So what is, there was temporary fit up the Windsor County Courthouse, and would
Yes,
that come out of that 7.5 at all?
yes, it did.
What was done there, you know, because the cases have moved to Woodstock in the interim.
It was a holding cell and a renovation to the existing restroom that had to be hardened. And so there's also money in here to restore that restroom, possibly the holding cell when we're done.
To restore it back to what it was,
That is correct.
and what was it before?
The restroom was a restroom. Terry, or Greg, I don't know what the room at Woodstock was used for
The
prior.
holding cell room was actually an office,
What's that?
that was not being utilized.
That's coming out of that 8 million.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Questions? So if you don't get the 8 million in FY 26, you get a portion of that, what happens?
We'd have to stop the project.
You've gone out to bid
And we're under construction.
and you're under construction. So the 8 million would complete the project in the building, but does not take care of this bank stabilization. And
That is correct.
so when do you anticipate finishing the project?
Originally, it was going to be in 26. By pivoting and not having to tear down the exterior brick and all that, it could be this year, late fall. But,
Did you tell us fall 26?
yes, it was.
Okay.
And
But you
then,
think it might
but
be
now
fall
that we're having these discussions, it
Yeah.
could be sped up considerably.
Hope this fall.
Yes. There's always hope.
Let's get her done.
Yes.
So you haven't gotten your guaranteed maximum price yet. That's coming in.
That is correct.
So it could change. That 8 million could change. Maybe.
Anything's possible. I don't expect it to, because still out of that 8 million is the lease that we're paying for the utilities across the street. So that money's out of that 8 million also. But from what we were, the bid package that was put together for us to review, to say go to the contractor, the $8 million covers all of that, everything that we need.
So while we're here with the White River Courthouse, there is on our spreadsheet, the Woodstock Courthouse Tower backup.
Mhm.
That's not on here.
It's right at the top.
I know, but it's not here.
It's not on here because those funds are being appropriated to judiciary. These two projects, White River and Newport, are coming to BGS.
Sean,
Joe, are you worried about the bank and the river? Is it gonna be okay for a few years, or is that something we should consider doing soon?
Everything in past, I don't know, 5, 8 years I've been driving by there, it looks the same.
Okay,
So I'm not concerned. Our geotech consultant didn't say, you got to hurry up and get this done.
Okay.
They know we've been looking at it for a few years, so if there was panic in their voice, yes, I would have asked for those funds.
okay, thank you.
So it sounds like it needs to be done. Like you can't ignore it forever. but it doesn't have to be done tomorrow.
Correct. When you drive up back, you'll notice the guardrail is at a slight angle going down the bank, and there's a divot in the pavement. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you don't get the 8 million, construction basically stops. And the 8 million will get us to complete the project hopefully by this fall. So the whole project is about 16 million. 16.5, not quite 16
For
million.
the building portion and at least, correct.
And then you got an additional in the next biennium might be 2.5 for the bank stabilization.
Correct.
Questions? Good to go? Well,
So this 8 million is essentially 8% of our budget for the biennium that we're.
but it's
discussing.
cash. This is cash. Yeah, the cash fund. Okay. Anything else? Okay,
Next up is Newport.
Newport, the saga of Newport.
It's a big deal.
Yes.
If only we could find land.
So this time around, to give a little bit of a perspective, I provided a site plan of the site, and it's the plan itself in the upper right-hand corner. In the upper left-hand corner of the site plan is where this court is. As you come down on the site plan is where the county court is located. And then behind the county court is the old jail, and the phone company owns the other property that you see in the upper right-hand corner of the site plan. You can see around the courthouse that we're talking about today, it's very constricted. There's about 8 parking spaces between the courthouse and the phone company building, and there's roughly a 2 to 3 foot step between the pavers, that somewhat shaded area, hatched area, the backside of the building, to both the phone company and also to the county court. It's not an easy way to take over a little extra land here and there for anything else. We also have a fuel oil tank that's in back there. As you can see, at the bottom left of the building is the access ramp that gets you into the building, and there's really no parking for somebody to use that ramp. So out back, they're unmarked spaces, or you park out on the street.
I have a question here.
Yeah, so that is my question. So when, I know a couple weeks ago, or last week, we talked about this and the higher cost of renovating versus finding new, et cetera. And we went over the limited parking out back. But here's my question, I guess, just has parking in general been a problem there? Let's just pretend we do this renovation. Is parking going to be a big issue, or has it been something that's not been an issue or won't be is places somewhere else for them to park? You know what I mean?
You do,
In
and
other words, is it worth doing it simply for the lack of parking, or?
I think this project is definitely more than just the parking, and I would have to defer to the judiciary about the parking. Since then, I don't know who actually gets the park out back. And the state's attorney has moved on, so has probation and parole. So judiciary is the only one in the building right now.
I mean, because I understand all the renovation stuff. I just want to know if that's also like, you could put $10 million, $20 million in this building, but then not have parking. You know what I mean?
Right.
The criminal, Sherry Corso, State Court Administrator, the criminal courthouse at 217 Main Street, the one that's pictured here, there's very minimal parking there. The parking spaces behind are usually reserved for security, to be honest, and maybe the judges. Otherwise, the parking behind the other courthouse, the civil, family, and probate courthouse, there is more parking there.
There is parking there, and I presume then your staff uses it.
And people just walk, or court users. Otherwise, it's on-street parking, just downtown on-street parking.
So, if I can just
Greg?
add a comment here. My name is Greg Mosley, Chief of Finance and Administration for the Vermont Judiciary. That parking lot that's on the county location is a staff only. It has signage that it's staff only. So participants in visitors to the courthouse generally do street parking.
Okay,
But
thank you.
the parking has not come up as an issue in any conversations that I've had as the issue. It's really the building itself and the deficiencies that are inside that has come up among the judiciary conversations.
All right, thank you so much.
Gina?
I know it's pretty committed to move off this site, but can we jack that building up and put another couple stories on it?
Probably not, but I don't know that for a fact because it is on the National Historic Register.
Yep,
So it'd be that whole process to go through. So what would it look like?
yep,
If you did that? The other issue, it is a completely wood frame structure.
yeah, so you can't. go
So
out.
you're limited. Structurally, you could, but you're also limited. They have a courtroom on the third floor. And because it is a wood structure, they're limited to the number of people that you could have in there. So courtroom is considered an
For
assembly.
fire code or,
For fire code.
yeah,
So I think you can, in that courtroom, you could get a lot more people in there just because of the size of the room. But technically, by code, you cannot occupy more than 50, I think, in that room.
It's good to know.
So it has, pluses and minuses to what you could do. So if you jacked it up, yes, you gain more, but you're still not, your spaces above could be somewhat limited.
Well, we've been dealing with this 5 years now, at least. Trying to figure out what to do with this courthouse and this site. We're hoping to purchase some land in downtown Newport. Keep hoping. That doesn't seem to come to fruition. So when do we bite the bullet? And decide another route, whatever that route may be? Do we have to stay in Newport for the court? Is it a requirement to stay in Newport? There's one question. Yeah, I just don't want to throw a bomb in all this, but I really think we got to start thinking here because we've put aside so much money for this.
Mm.
And it's been 3 years. We just haven't been able to move. And then 1 million is being requested for FY27. If we can't, if the goal is to stay downtown and we can't purchase the land that we were hoping for, what's our alternative? And then the other alternative, do we have to stay in Newport? I'm just throwing
Yep.
questions out on the table.
Thank you. This is big.
Will and then Gina.
Yeah, just to add on that, what do you guys have any viable alternatives that you guys would go with other than Newport if you couldn't find something in that area?
Originally, when we went out to RFP for looking for land, I'd have to check with Eric Pembroke on that. I can't remember if we were looking for a certain distance in downtown area, around the downtown. If we did, Greg, are you aware of what that RFP stated? If we were looking anywhere on a bus loop, those are
I'm not familiar with what's in the RFP, but we have had
Okay.
conversations about going outside of Newport downtown. And the court has raised the concern of just making sure that it's accessible. And I'm not really sure of the bus situation up there. But I know that there was talk about up the road to Derby, I think. And the court did not dismiss that out of hand. It's not like we would prefer Newport, but it's not essential.
So maybe we're at the point, putting in language that BGS goes out with another RFP and broaden the area that you are looking at. I just want to move off the dime on this because we have got to address this courthouse and it's been going on for 5 or 6 years at least. And it's got to be time at some point we just decide what direction we're going to go in. Well,
I'll turn it over to Gina. When you guys put out that
Sorry,
RFP,
Gina.
no, I'm sorry, Gina. when you guys put out that RFP, how do you guys calculate like accessibility? Like, is it like a distance radius or how, like, just like the bus situation? Like what do you?
I'd have to get back to you on that with Erica. You know, I think it is looking for certain size property. It may have said in the RFP that, you know, we're looking to be on a bus loop or some type of other transportation to get people to and back who cannot drive. But other than that, I'm not 100% sure how that RFP is, so we can probably get a copy of it.
I forgot. Sorry, that's okay. It's no big deal.
I'm just gonna throw so. Let me ask this, Joe, do you think it's viable to do a renovation to it with this postage stamp size parking area there? Do you think that's not a good way to, like, is that chasing good money after, you know, a bad situation?
I don't believe we've evaluated it for that yet, because when this first started, probation and parole and state's attorneys were still in the building.
Yep.
So to be evaluating that afterwards, you know, there's still a lot you would have to take into account, the accessibility issues. And the photo here in the top left is a photo of the stairs and the elevator.
Right.
So you can see the white around the door. That is the elevator shaft. The only way to get in that elevator, if you were in a standard wheelchair, we have one there that you have to downsize to.
Right.
So an electric wheelchair will not get into that elevator. And even then, when you get in, you're not turning around.
Right.
So you really got to back in.
Yeah.
So you're limited. That is an open stairway. And once you go to the upper floors, well, even on the first floor, that's outside of the photos, there are other doors. So that's sort of that center core. The upper floors are also blocked off. So you have that center stair tower running in the center rear of the building. To the right-hand side of that, in the rear corner, back when we purchased the building back in the 80s, we put in a second stair tower for means of egress. So yes, things could be renovated. We really have to do the study on that to say, you know, how much space does the court need? Since I think we were originally looking at this, they have changed their operations. And that's what, you know,
So it might fit in there then.
It could if we did an analysis, but I don't know without taking that next step.
All right, thank you.
And then what the accessibility on the exterior is still the issue to resolve too. Because today's codes still come into play.
Yep.
So if, you know, if I'm touching the outside wall and I peel off the sheetrock and the insulation, I got to comply with today's new energy code.
Gotcha.
And that's difficult.
It'd be a lot of work in
The
there.
entire building is not air conditioned.
Yep.
So
Okay, thank you.
that's why we were looking to move elsewhere.
Thanks.
So the spot that the state's attorney and P&P were in, is that considered a historic building as well?
They were in the building on just different floors. State's attorney was on the upper floor, the fourth floor, and probation parole, I think it was mainly on the first floor only. Yeah, so we both had 2 and 3.
Both courts have to be together? Is it more efficient if both courts are on the same property?
We're actually looking at having most of the operations be in the criminal courthouse for efficiencies. And now that we have the extra space, since the state's attorneys and probation and parole have vacated. So that's something we're actually looking at. The advantage of having the 2 buildings, even if all of the staff and court operations are in the one building, is that we still have use of the jury courtroom at the other courthouse if need be. But they're actually looking at that in the meantime as a way to increase efficiencies and take advantage of the space. Joe, you've been involved with that?
I have not been.
Oh, okay.
Probably Eric in planning.
Oh, okay.
I'm just thinking how we can move ahead here. So I've got a couple things that maybe we need to look at and have language. Allow you to go out for an RFP outside of Newport and other areas. Could be one option. Another option for language could be that you really start evaluating what would be entailed in the cost for renovations. Can't think of anything. I don't know what other folks can come up with. But
Seems fair.
I mean, we'd have to,
See what you could do there.
Because we'd have to really go back and amend some current language because we've allowed to go out and buy land. And you could keep that, but first off, you're gonna have to go out with an RFP to neighboring communities and see if there's anything available. We just need to move off the dime here.
Probably the existing line, I'd have to go back and read it. We probably could easily put an RFP out to look further beyond the downtown. But I'd have to talk to the commissioner on that and Eric and all to make sure that we're in that language.
Because I know you're asking for $1 million for FY 27. What would that $1 million for FY 27 get you? What's the thought?
The anticipation would be the fact that we actually find a place to go build and would have the design underway, and that $1,000 would be the beginning of bringing a construction manager or starting that process. So, continue the spend as you go.
Thoughts, questions of the committee?
Well, I mean, I would like to see, how you worded your analysis of the building. I mean, for renovation, I mean, I know it's expensive, but my question was about the parking, which Sean followed up on. But if that's not a problem, then to try to rehab this building is probably where we should at least start. But we, as Dallas, have got to move off the dime and actually do something. But I know that there's other people in the building who are not fond of the idea of moving, and whether or not they have the influence to stop it from moving, we have to consider that, I think. But I would like to see us figure out exactly what we can do to this building.
So you've spent 1.2 million today. What has that been spent on?
We've done some planning. We've done also assessment of, I think, the property next door and maybe some others, plus putting stuff out to bid for our design to start that. We haven't spent any money on that, sorry. Exactly the detail of that, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to find that out for you.
Yeah, can you get back to us? Anything else? I mean, we gotta figure out something here. And to put aside $1 million in FY 27. When money is tight everywhere else in our capital bill, is a heavy ask. For that. We gotta do something. So, we'll get back to it, I'm sure, when we do markup.
It's not a small thing.
Anything else? Folks? Okay, those are the two projects that BGS is involved in. And then we're gonna shift, and then there's nothing on the Washington, the Berry Courts, right?
That's correct.
We're kind of trying to figure out what to do with that. So, Harry, why not?
Hey, Greg moves that he's still is the Chief of Finance and Administration, who will be primarily presenting. I'm happy to answer questions. Phil, I made copies, but did you already have copies of Greg's handout? Or-
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Would you like us to start at the top with the Woodstock?
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Greg Mosley, for the record, Chief of Finance and Administration. In addition to the state-owned courthouses, we have 23 courthouses across the state, and 11 of those are state-owned, and you heard Joe report on the needs of those. We are required by statute to survey the counties to see which county courthouses owned by the county government need capital construction. And so we did that this year. We have a number of requests here, and we also have an additional request that just came in this month that I can talk to you about that is not in the governor's recommended budget. We'll start, I guess, with the Woodstock Courthouse power backup request. That's the Woodstock Courthouse in Windsor. It's used normally for civil and probate. Currently, it is the swing space for criminal.
Woodstock, Windsor County, but Woodstock, the Lord. Sorry, good.
And we're using the existing courthouse for the divisions that have jury trials, since that is already set up for jury trials. The county has requested a backup generator. They have a backup battery system that only does lighting, and it only does it for about 90 minutes, which means the courthouse has to close when we lose power. And so they've requested and received estimates for a diesel-powered backup generator that would operate the entire courthouse so that we could continue court operations if they lose power.
How often do they lose power?
It's been a couple times a year, usually for less than a day, but we have had to close that building on occasion because of this problem.
So where would the generator go? Because that's a pretty tight spot. And is there a generator there now that's just not functioning?
No, there's just a battery backup that does lighting. So there's no generator right now. And I'm looking up the number of times they lost power. I do have that here. I think it was 4 times last fall, in the fall of 2003. 4 intense storms, extended power outages to this courthouse. And in 2 of those cases, sessions were canceled for the day and sent staff home.
Yeah,
You said-
when
you
in
said 2?
session, yeah, when in
Okay.
session. So could those battery backup, could that be enlarged at all in terms of the amperage, in terms of what's put out?
We did ask that question of the county. They had a solar company come in and assess battery generated backup, and they determined that it would not work with the electrical system that's currently in the building. So their best option was a diesel powered generator.
And that would be placed outside.
Mhm.
Is there
Yes.
enough space? Because that's pretty tight space there in the
It is
back.
pretty tight space. Yes.
There's not much parking.
No, there's not much parking either, but they did find that they could put it and install it, but it's a tight space. You're right.
And who did the estimate for the 100,000 for the backup? Was that the county judges? I mean, was that the side judges? Was that?
Side judges received 3 different estimates, and they went with, or they've used the request of 100,000 based on one of the estimates that they thought that was best was from an electrical company. They did consult with SunCommon, who said that the solar powered battery backup was not going to be sufficient for that building.
So is the county budget putting in any money for this? The county
not-
courthouse?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
We've had this struggle for many, 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 many,
Many.
many years. Is there, I know that right now the answer to this question, I shouldn't even ask it, but I am gonna ask it. I know the Windsor County Courthouse in White River, the functions have been moved up to Woodstock temporary. I get that. Is there other state court functions that happens in this county building?
Other than what we're using it for swing space?
Yes.
So it is the home of the civil and probate divisions of the judiciary. And so it is a courthouse year round. It's just that we've rearranged things this particular year because of the construction down in White River.
So if the construction in White River wasn't going on, there are state courts that are running in a county courthouse.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get across.
Yes.
'Cause Because you've set up your structure of state courts a little different than what years ago, what used to be. All state courts used to be in our state courthouses. There were a few courthouses that also had a county court function. It was Addison County was the first one, and then Lamoille County. And now the judiciary reorganized their whole court system 15 years ago.
2010.
Well, 15 years ago. But we never really addressed our courthouses. We got 23 courthouses, 11 of which are state-owned. And then the remaining 12 are county-owned, but the county courthouses always come in here looking for money for projects. Because there's some state function in those county courthouses, but those county courthouses are not under state ownership. They're under the ownership of the county and the side judges.
That's all very accurate.
Yes.
And we tried to deal with this for 20 years, 15, 20 years.
With the unified court system and the 4 divisions, civil, probate, family, and criminal are all considered state, one unified superior court. But you're right, prior to that, they were considered civil and probate were more considered county, but it's all unified into one now. And I don't believe we're tenants in that building. I don't think they charge anything.
No, none of the counties charge the judiciary for rent. They give us use of the building for free.
Those are always the little side pieces that play into it. So there's no rent being paid. You're not paying fee for space out of your budget for anything. It's just in utilities. So do you pay utilities?
No, the counties generally pay for utilities like electrical, water, telephone. We pay for our computer network. So anything related to the internet, broadband, any of the equipment inside, it's all paid for by the judiciary. And then, there are all sorts of interesting questions around parking, access to the building. We've been wanting to add badge swipes, which is a state system, because it adds to the security of the building. For the most part, the counties have been agreeable to that, but that means you're putting county employees, giving them state-issued badges so that they can access their own building. Sometimes we put an X-ray machine or a metal detector on a floor that wobbles. And so we hire contractors to go in and support the floor so it doesn't wobble. It's usually a negotiation. And of course, during COVID, there was a lot of conversation about the HVAC in all these buildings.
Questions?
It's not a question so much, but it's definitely not for today. But this, to me, when I'm hearing this, and just from what I know before, it seems like we need to have a little larger overview of how our court is, like the whole county issue, that the county court, for example, for one, but even our county governments. But that's it. The way this is, we don't charge you, but can you pay for this? That's kind of like a friendly neighbor kind of thing, but it's not really good for government accountability, so to speak. But maybe they're consolidated today. There's a conversation maybe that should be had at some point in the future about whether or not this should be 2 separate entities. But
maybe that should hang out in government ops and judiciary.
Possibly, yeah. I'm just saying this highlights that there's a bigger issue than just this bill. Not to have a big debate about it, just to.
Well, we could pull out a bill we had about 15, 20 years ago.
What we could do is talk to some retired assistant judges and have them just put a crazy assessment on towns, and that would trigger the whole conversation. They can do that. Yeah, they don't in practice.
But anyway, I just want to highlight that it just highlights that there's a bigger issue than this building, so.
So the 100,000 would purchase the generator, take care of the installation of it?
Yes.
So being such a tight footprint, I'm assuming it would go in the back of the building near the parking lot?
Yeah, there's a small section of grass right behind the building.
Yep. Is there any thoughts when that generator is running for the exhaust coming in through the windows? Because we
I
have a
have not-
generator out here that's a distance from this side of the building, and when it's running, the diesel smell comes into the building.
I have not heard any conversation about that. I'm not sure of the situation with the exhaust.
So if you had the 100,000, is the plan to get that put in this summer and fall?
Yes, it would be a fairly quick installation.
And what would happen with the battery one you've got now? Does the 100,000 take into account dismantling that, or is that still there?
It's a very small battery system, so it would just be removed. Like I said, it only covers emergency lighting for about 90 minutes, so they're not big batteries.
Yep. And if you went with the bigger battery system, the current electrical wiring in the building wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah, and I'm not that familiar with the electrical wiring, but it was explained to me as a three-phase wiring or electrical system. And for some reason, the battery system would not work on the entire building.
Well, at least it doesn't have knob and tube.
Maybe it does.
Yeah, questions? Okay, let's go to the next one.
The next one on your list, the Essex County Connector Project.
And Greg, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to also mention that Assistant Judge Ken Stransky from Essex County is also here if there are questions about the specifics.
Welcome. Will, what do we got?
No, I was just curious because there was discussion a minute ago about that line item about Essex County. So
Yeah, we'll
we're
get
gonna get
into
into it.
Yeah.
So the request here is to connect the county courthouse, which is in Guildhall, Vermont, to a meeting house that's right next door to it. Right now, the courthouse lacks a number of security functionality, and it doesn't have any room large enough to handle jury work outside the courthouse, outside of the courtroom. And so currently, we use the Guildhall, which is about 100 yards down the road. And that's where we have jurors report to on jury draw day. And then they walk down to the courthouse, which is about 100 yards away. If we were to connect these two buildings together, we could use the meeting house as the jury draw. They wouldn't have to go outside. It wouldn't be a security risk. We would also add some security functionality so that we could separate staff from the general public, kind of a front of the house, back of the house. That would increase the safety and security for staff and judges. And this particular plan adds a sally port on the back part of the building, which currently does not have and generally is a standard security function in a criminal courthouse. So there is a plan, a blueprint that they've put together. It's fairly modestly priced at $3.6 million. And again, it's a county-owned building. So I'll open it up to questions.
Questions? Sean.
What's a sally port?
Oh, sorry. A sally port essentially is a garage, but it's a hardened garage that law enforcement would use to move a detainee in and out. So they drive in the cruiser, they'll lock down the garage, and then they transport the detainee into a holding cell. Right now, the current building does not have a sally port, does not have an adequate holding cell either. They use a conference room when they need to.
Thank you.
Another county courthouse, 3.6 million. And would that cover the whole cost of the project for the connector?
Yes.
And some renovations to the existing courthouse as well.
Yeah, so they would redesign the interior of the building. The courtroom itself would stay the same, but the ancillary parts, the hallways and offices around, that would be rearranged, and what they'd be accomplishing there is creating a front of the house where the public can interact, and then the back of the house that can be locked where staff and judges' chambers would be.
James?
And the intention with this would be all completed this year? Yeah,
Yeah, the county has worked with the architect, and they have lined up contractors. I understand that they are eager to get started as soon as the funding is approved, and could be ready to go in a matter of months. Although I would defer to Judge Stransky for more detail on the schedule.
so thank you. He shook his head yes, so.
So is there any county dollars, anything in the county budget for this project?
No, not that I'm aware of. I stand corrected if Judge Stransky has anything to add there.
We would,
Judge?
we would be responsible for finishing off all of the inside part of it, all of the new furniture,
Fit it.
all that stuff on the inside.
So how could you kind of line someone up and be ready to go to construction pretty quickly if you didn't have money?
This is a pretty simple, if you look at some of the blueprints there, it's a pretty simple construction design. It's a flat roof. It's essentially a breezeway between two buildings. The other two buildings both exist already. They're both from the 1840s. It's essentially a sheetrock construction and a slab foundation, no basement, nothing like that.
So you've been working, I'm not being critical of this, I'm just trying to figure out if you've gone that far into your planning and design and already have folks in play and you can go out to construction as soon as you get the money, where were you planning on getting the money?
We got the design allocation from the legislature last year out of COVID money, which paid for all this design that you have here. And we got all the bids together through the architect to submit to the governor's office this past fall. And all the bids are there from all the local contractors. And they're basically ready to
Go forward.
go forward.
When you received the COVID money, was there any agreements made that the state would pick up the construction costs?
No, that's the hope.
It's the hope. Can I answer your question, Joe?
Well, as it turned out, I sat in the lunch center at Ingalls and ran into the gentleman at lunchtime, so. But Essex County, of course, is a furthest northeast county in the state. Were this courthouse, if this did not exist, where would folks in Essex County have to go, and how far would they need to travel into Orleans or Caledonia?
The northern part of the county would have to go to Newport, and the southern part would have to go to St. Johnsbury. And you're looking at an hour to hour and a half drive minimum
Each way.
each way.
Not good.
I mean, I live in Norton and I've got an hour drive just to Guildhall myself. My other side just lives in Lunenburg and he's got a half-hour drive to Guildhall. It's a huge county landmass wise. And there's no public transportation.
How many days is the courthouse open?
It's 5 days a week.
5 days a week?
Yeah.
Is the criminal court open 5 days a week?
Criminal court is not 5 days a week, but there's criminal court for arraignments, there's abuse hearings, and there's jury trials. But it's essentially weekly, but I say 1 day a week for criminal court, and there's family court, probate court. All 5 sections.
And where are detainees typically lodged who are arraigned at this court?
In the cruiser.
But what if they,
St. John's River.
and I'm sorry, in St. Johnsbury and Newport are how far from this courthouse?
You're looking at an hour and a half from St. Johnsbury, hour and a half, 2 hours from Newport.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gina?
So the Defendants literally like sit in the cruiser until they're called in.
But there's.
And
no
this
Sally
would
port.
resolve that.
You know, there's,
No, there's not.
no,
There'd be no Sally port in this design, correct?
oh, there is.
There is?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, this is.
Okay.
One of the things that is most shocking for almost any attorney that comes up there is, you know, there's one little conference room that's shared by everybody. And on a criminal court day or arraignment day where you can have 6, 7, 8 defense attorneys, they have to meet their clients out in the parking lot. Our state's attorney meets, you know, his office is the trunk of his car out in the parking lot. Yeah. It's literally, that's our conditions. This new design would bring all of that to be inside and safe.
When you had mentioned, or had mentioned in your paragraph, that also, I don't know how often this has happened, if it's even, you know, but minimize the possibility of mistrial due to juror interaction with the public. Now, so that makes me think, has it happened? It has happened, okay.
Right
It
now-
definitely,
Go ahead,
it
Joe.
has happened in other courthouses. I'm not familiar if it's happened in Essex. I don't know if Judge Stransky knows if it's happened there. But whenever you have the jurors interacting with the public, then they can also interact with the defendant's family members or friends. And right now, as I mentioned, we do have to walk those jurors down from a building down the street. So there is inconvenience and security and confidentiality risks involved. So this connector would allow us to use the meeting house and keep the jurors safer and more confidential as they move through the building. It also,
Just-
sorry,
No, just for clarity, the meeting house is owned by the county?
yes.
All the functions that go on in the courthouse are the state judicial functions. The functions that go on in the meeting house, and then the third building, which is on the far right, which is the sheriff's building, those are the county functions. Now, essentially everything that goes on in the courthouse building are state functions.
So the request is 3.685,910. What if you didn't get the full amount? Would you be able to make up the rest of it through the county budget?
We voted on the county budget this morning.
And is there any money for this included,
For the exterior, no.
for the connector?
Everything we had in the county budget was to finish off the interior.
It fit up? And how much was that for the fit up that you're estimating?
The county budget was 360,000.
It's gonna be my question was budget.
Committee, thoughts? Sean?
Question, how far are these two buildings apart, just out of curiosity?
25 feet.
Oh, thank you, Troy.
Yeah, oh.
Appreciate that. You're so
He's always
good.
looking things up.
For the record, oh, it's there.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, they're close. Okay, thank you.
So the meeting house is on the right, right?
As you look from the front, it's meeting house is on the left.
Any other questions of the committee?
So it's,
And during the construction process also, and it's one of the things that Greg and then our local court operations managers talked about is during the construction process, the meeting house would be used as the courtroom.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't have to impact court operations that much. It would definitely take a lot of coordination to move everything next door, but it is possible.
Did this construction of a connector trigger any ADA review? For changes in either building?
We've already done that. It's all been put into the design process
For the connector.
for the connector.
So what are you gonna be updating for ADA?
All the bathrooms, the floors, the ramps, everything. And it's all already been approved by historic preservation.
And is there an elevator or a
That's
lift?
not necessary.
It's one level.
Not one
All
level.
one level.
We get the T's crossed and the I's dotted, it's interesting.
It's right now, it's hard to describe unless you've actually been there, but especially in the back where the jury room is and behind the courtroom. The bathrooms are from the 1940s, you know, they're ancient, they're so tiny and so non-ADA compliant. This would remove all of those and replace them with ADA compliant bathrooms. The great thing about having safety and right now staff is sharing bathrooms with the public, you know, it's just really inappropriate and unsafe. This is a really efficient, cost-effective way of providing a safe function for, and county. You just literally can't afford this.
Yeah, how many employees work for your office and for the county judiciary system as a whole?
It's state has this.
Well, there's
state.
one employee who is also a county clerk, but is also does a judicial assistant work. Greg, Angela.
Yeah, there's a judicial assistant that is a shared employee with the county, and then there's a manager and I think at least two other judicial assistants that go up to Essex on days when they have criminal court or family court. The magistrate circles around to there. We have the judge, the sitting judge that's up there, and then there's a case manager that travels up there on occasion too. So generally they're traveling from St. Johnsbury, and so all these employees, except for that one full-time judicial assistant, all the other employees are up there on certain days.
They also have the ability to do remote hearings, for example. So sometimes a judge may be preside at the Caledonia Courthouse conducting a remote hearing in Essex. So that's another way to try to accommodate.
So the amount that's in the governor's budget's $3,685,910. Is that the exact amount of what the bid went out for, or not?
That's the bid that came back for all the construction of the exterior portion of it. With some contingency.
What do you mean the exterior? I thought you also said it was gonna bring restrooms and everything.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the plumbing, all of that. It's not the furniture, not.
Right, it's not the fit up.
The construction, not the fit up.
So the whole project came back at $3,685,910.
Correct.
How much contingency is in that number?
Roughly, you have that.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I believe it's a 20% contingency, which is consistent with what BGS normally provides, but I'll confirm that in just a moment.
Just thinking about inflation with the cost of building right now, that doesn't.
And that was in August or September. That's a fresh. Very recent.
Yes, it's pretty good.
And you already have ready, you haven't signed a contract yet with a construction firm.
No.
You're waiting for this money.
Definitely.
I like the concept whereby two historic buildings are left intact and connected.
Yes.
Thoughts, questions?
It's illuminating to hear, so
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you have more, another in this document, Greg, you're talking about the,
One late addition.
well, it's, you're talking Lamoille, is that the Lamoille County?
Yes.
Yeah,
Backup generator, another generator in Lamoille County.
yeah. So this came in just recently from Lamoille County, from the assistant judges there. Again, asking for a generator similar to Woodstock. It would be diesel powered. Their estimate that they've received is 190,000. And they also have suffered from power outages over the last couple of years, and that shuts down the courthouse. Now, Lamoille is an interesting courthouse because while it is owned by the county, there's a state addition that was added to that back in 2016. So it is the one courthouse in the county that serves all four divisions of the judiciary. So civil, probate, family, and criminal all operate out of that courthouse.
So have they looked at a battery backup instead of a diesel? Do you know?
Let me look at this. I'm not sure that they did look at a battery backup.
Is this gonna be the same thing about,
No, it shouldn't be, because we did a lot of upgrades.
if it's like three, phase,
Yeah, we did a lot.
yeah, power, that's new. But there's 2 or 3.
Yeah, I don't have that information to know if they looked at the battery backup option.
Did you find that out at all?
Okay.
What would be the anticipated construction sequence for the?
Again, installation of a generator is not too big of a construction cost. It's would be exterior to the building and then just the electrical lines going into the power source. So it would be over the course of a couple of months. I don't think that there's any more detail provided to a schedule though.
And have they put any money in their county budget for this?
I don't know the answer to that, but I am not aware that they have.
Can you check into that?
Yeah. That and the schedule, I'll check into.
James?
So my question, so the generator here versus the other is twice the cost. Is the building twice the size? Is there some more usage? I've never been there, I don't know, but I'm assuming there's gotta be something that's causing a need for a larger generator.
Yeah, it is a
Usually
larger courthouse, but I haven't had the chance to ask more questions since this just came in. So I will convey those questions and put together more information and submit it back to this committee.
That'd be awesome.
Mary?
Alice, is there an understanding of what counties should possibly be doing where they're chipping in something of having, I mean, is there any?
Matching funds.
To date, no.
Which is why I
Is
brought
that
up,
why we should be possibly considering language?
We had a bill 15 years ago, to set up a process, and it didn't go anywhere.
and that's why I brought it up earlier, because like it seems like a problem.
We have quite a few courthouses, and at the time, the judiciary had not unified its whole court system at the time. That happened 10, 15 years ago, so it was a little prior to that we did all this, because we were getting a lot of requests for county courthouses that had state functions in them.
I just didn't know if we had any.
Yeah, I was just gonna add the minutes point that I've been, because there's a court case, I believe it's Stobie Memorial, that pretty much prohibits counties from being able to raise money for projects like that. Is that correct, Terry? Or is that set, that might be related to their ability to raise revenue through the grand list?
Apologies, I'm not familiar with that case, but I can certainly research it. Do you know, Peg, is that anything, an issue that came up during your tenure?
I don't know about that case or anything like that. I'm aware of just the state statute that I referenced in the memo that says that we will survey the counties for their capital needs and be the messenger to bring those to the legislature. And in terms of prioritization, we really don't have more information or authority to do that.
I mean, I think we're kind of scratching at what could be a very broad conversation that just involves the jurisdiction of multiple committees. As far as what county taxing authorities are, and we haven't, it's just in judge with us, it's kind of obscure, but county budgets are typically quite small. They don't need to be, because assistant judges make assessments and send them to the towns. That's how it works. And the only recourse, if you don't like it, is to vote for different assistant judges. But then, who owns these buildings and such, and those could be, very long conversations involving many different hearings and different committees. So I think for the purposes of these projects, it's not really fair to consider them within those definitions and maybe just consider them, as they stand. But that's something that should be clarified.
We've tried.
Because they might be county property, but they're not really used for county activity in large part.
Right.
Because
It's kind of in this like limbo.
that's what is the issue, where the function of the court has unified, where before we had a split between state function of the courts, county functions. Probate was county and was civil. What was the other one? Civil was county. And then there was a unification of the court system. But what was silent on that was the court buildings. And ownership of the buildings.
The entire.
Who pays for the buildings? That never occurred.
Yeah.
And at that time, we did have a few courts that were unified. One being in Middlebury. The other one was Lemoyne.
There was one courthouse in the county and no state courthouse.
Yeah. So that's why I brought it up earlier. Like I was clear. I hope I was clear to everybody. It's not a conversation for today, not because we don't want to talk about it, because it's so massive. But it has to be going forward. It has to be addressed. Or at least I think has to be addressed. But Joe's 100% right that we can't hold the current situation. We can't hold them to a standard that we think that they should be at, which is maybe all state ownership, whatever. But we still have these functions, and as you correctly pointed out, that the overwhelming majority of the activities in them are state activities. So, Judge, I can't call on you, but I was just saying the judge is looking for it.
So on this issue, the most recent history might be pertinent. We are on the finishing end of a project, $5.7 million of general fund dollars, so it didn't go through this committee, where we installed or upgraded HVAC in these 11 county buildings. And it was state funded and state operated. We managed the project and hired the contractors and either upgraded or installed HVAC that would support the court operations during a pandemic. So it was a safety issue. And as we finished each project, we handed off the ownership of that new HVAC system to the counties. They're going to be paying the electrical support or power maintenance and anything like that. So similar to what your question is, how much does the state invest in a building that they don't own? Just wanted to mention that because of the HVAC project, it was about 5.7 million that we've already invested.
So Greg, was that COVID money at all, or was that just straight general fund?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about that. We asked for it as an ARPA request. We designed it to fit the ARPA request, but when the dust settled on ARPA, we were on the outside looking in. That's general fund dollars. It was one-time general fund.
And some of that just got reallocated, about 800,000 of it.
That's where we're requesting it be done. Yes. Yeah. And that's really reallocation is a strong word. It's actually more of a clarification of legislative intent. The appropriation was very specific about HVAC, and we were wanting to invest in the same buildings for wiring and security purposes. And we didn't feel like we had the legislative intent to do that. We have the money. We would just want to expand the scope of the appropriation slightly.
I really wanted to add to what Greg said, because he touched off a great intro to how we started working with him 2 years ago with the HVAC system. Because the system that was put in Guildhall, which was one of the earlier systems that he put in, was over $500,000 in our building, which the county never could have afforded. And I joked with Terry, it looks like Battlestar Galactica up in our attic. It is huge and massive. And I remember sending you pictures of the thing. It is unbelievable state of the art. And it brought us a system that never could have been there before. And we've got a 40-year-old oil boiler down in the basement that we can now keep using because we now have heat pumps upstairs. So the oil system down in the basement is back up. But that also changed the value of our building. Our property insurance went through the roof because we had to up our value for replacement value. None of that was budgeted at the time. Our electric rate went up, but our oil rate went down. All those things had to change, but we weren't budgeted that particular year. But we have a great rapport and relationship with judiciary. So we have these conversations that it's so easy to work with, but it's strange on paper. You know, our insurance agent was really upset at the time, but I mean, our rate went through the roof, but we were covered if the building burned down. Because that was a huge investment that was there.
Well, and what's interesting about this investment is it was designed for HVAC, but we had to do a few other things. In some courthouses, we had to upgrade the electrical system. So there was a secondary benefit for the county just to get the HVAC to work. In Essex, for example, there was a lot of bats living in the belfry up there. We had to hire an exterminator and replace all the insulation. Many of the courthouses received new insulation in the attics because we had to, remove that to get the HVAC in there. So there's a lot of secondary benefit in some of these courthouses, and it's clear that the state has invested in these buildings already. So I think from the assistant judge's perspective, asking for a generator is just continuing that relationship, and it's not well defined.
Thank you.
That is true. It is not well defined.
And yeah, we've got a $2,000 a year maintenance contract that we now have to budget every year that we didn't have to do before, but we're gladly doing it.
Between this request and the one for Woodstock and the one for Essex, it's almost 4 million of our capital budget. Just to put that in perspective for folks. Okay.
Of
Well-
bonded dollars for, so. that-
Yeah, I think it's all
And then
bonded.
the 8 million for the other one is.
cash.
Sure.
Anything else for this? So we're not making any promises. You know the drill, Terry. We get the information, and then starting by the end of February, we'll start to do what we call markup, which is go through each request for the capital budget. And we may be reaching out with more questions since we do that.
And we'll provide the answers to the questions that you posed today in terms of the schedule, the number of square feet, the different courthouses, whether it's salary, all those questions, we'll get that information to you.
Thank you.
And any others that come up, don't hesitate.
Any other questions? Thoughts from anyone?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
you all.
Well, we really congratulate you for zooming in. It was
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you so much.
Kind of large poster boards that show it. I don't know if that would be helpful to you all. I have them outside if you want me to read, but that's something that.
That'd be helpful. Yeah, that would be great.
Travels.
Yeah, safe drive. You're going north, not south, so it'll be better. So you're driving.
Oh,
into
you gotta
the-
be challenging in the winter for normal. Meeting with.
We're still live, everybody.
Is that Essex? That's Essex. Great. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, everyone.
So
Letting me-
we are
And then
done
it's-
for,
Oh, no, that's your space.
we're done for the week. And then we're back here on Tuesday. We have scheduled next week. Be the first part of February. So everyone, so have a good week.